Well, today's episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast, we've got a very special guest. Ben Gothard is the founder of the Crypto Gaming Institute. And we're going to learn all about today how crypto and blockchain is finding its way into our universe through the metaverse and all kinds of other channels that are very relevant for the future. Ben, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
So Ben, let's just jump right into it. What is the Crypto Gaming Institute?
So the Crypto Gaming Institute is really a project that I put together once I realized that the future of gaming and the future of really how people interact with each other and are online are very intertwined. And the thread that connects it all is the blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I know I just threw out a lot of buzzwords there, but basically I grew up as a gamer. I've been a gamer since I was 6, an investor since I was 16. I've been building businesses since I was 20. And so the Crypto Gaming Institute is kind of like a culmination of all those things. And it's a learning journey because there's so many things to understand about the space. It is so complex and there's so many moving parts that I wanted to be able to have a platform to speak with people who are very intelligent and very smart and know what they're talking about and are building things and leaders, and be able to learn from them and share everything that I'm learning with the whole world and just help grow the space and grow the metaverse, which I'm sure we can get into, and like properly defining all these things. But that's kind of the North Star is the metaverse and growing that.
Well, I first experienced crypto gaming when I was playing Rocket League a couple of years ago. It's one of my favorite video games. My wife actually took it away from me because I was spending way too much time on it. I'm laughing because my producer here in the room today is actually very, very good at Rocket League. I'm a little jealous of his skills. But I remember in the game where part of the experience is you get all these amazing skins you can put on the car. And it just seems like it's a human instinct that we want to be unique. We want to differentiate ourselves. And in order to get some of these skins, you actually have to put fiat currency into the machine and use real dollars to buy some of that stuff. And it occurred to me that this is a perfect application for cryptocurrency.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. So let's think about the game, right? So you have your base character model and you get to play. And then where you put money in, the monetization point for the game are the skins. And those are just cosmetics that you use to express yourself and to be cool. Right. And a lot of the best free to play games that we're seeing, like League of Legends, Valorant, Rocket League, etc., that's the business model that they're going for.
Fortnite.
They want to. Exactly. They give away the product, which is the game. And then for all the expression and the customization and the added fun and the aesthetic, that is what they charge for. Okay. And so if you think about it, and I want to throw another term out here, but those skins are NFTs. Okay. And what happens they should be NFTs. In the future, they're going to be NFTs. Now and in the future, they're kind of two camps right now. But the money that you put in order to then purchase those skins, at least in League of Legends, which I'm a little bit more familiar with that game, so I just want to kind of go on that. You purchase their in-game currency or their RP with fiat. So you put fiat in, you get RP, and then you use RP to buy the skins. So RP is just crypto, right? It's not actually crypto in the sense of League of Legends is not a crypto game, but just to help understand this whole concept.
It's a currency that's contained inside of that game, so they can manage it.
Exactly. Okay, so now let's imagine a world where instead of only being able to purchase skins with that currency, imagine if that was freely tradable on the market. Right. It had a value in cash and it had a value in other currencies all around the world. So
and maybe even other games.
And in other games. Exactly. So this global or it's like all on the internet. So like this electronically interconnected grand marketplace of currencies, that's crypto. Each one has its own use case. So not all of them are in-game currencies for games that then also can be, but also the NFTs, meaning the cosmetics. And again, there are many, many different types, but this is a great example to kind of get us to the point where we can then talk about the other types. But the cosmetics or the skins right now in the current system, or let's say the League of Legends system, kind of the legacy model, if you will, right now you cannot do anything with that skin besides use it in the game. And so that's an issue, because what if you decide you don't want to play that game anymore, but you just put in hundreds, if not thousands of dollars into that game? Okay, well, now you're stuck and they got you. And that sucks as a gamer, right? Because you put all this time, all this effort, all this energy, and all this money, this cash. And so in the Web3 world, or let's say if that was an NFT, the skin, not only could you prove that you own it, because right now, Riot could just take the skin away from you and like, what are you going to do? It's their game, it's their skin, it's their property. You don't really own it. But with an NFT, you do own it. So let's say the skin was an NFT. Now you can take that out of the game and you can go and trade it on the open marketplace and get currency and use that currency and roll that into the next game you want to play. Or you could just hold on to it and say, this is now a digital collectible of mine. I hold skin number 447. And there's this history now with the skin of, okay, maybe I've played 500 games and I've won 400 and lost 100, but maybe I played in a grand championship and there was some cool historic event associated with that skin. Okay, well, now that has real value. Right. Now that has real value. So it unlocks what the idea of crypto gaming really does is it gives us as gamers and as people freedom. It unlocks the ability for us to be able to put money in to an in-game currency to use it there, but then also to have the freedom to be able to take that out and go to a new game, or to hold on to it and in a sense, bet on that game's survival and to really be able to participate in the value creation and capture of that game. So you can own more of what you love. You have the freedom to move into different currencies, into different games, into different ecosystems, and you have the ability to own really cool collectible things, which is the majority of use case for NFTs right now. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Because imagine this. What if later down the road, you have an NFT that's a cosmetic in a game, and that game gets so popular that now they have a partnership with, let's say, like a Starbucks or something. And so if you can show that you own a skin in this game, then let's call it the relevancy game, then you can take that skin and you can present it at Starbucks and maybe you get a discount or a coupon. And so that's just one example of like utility that can be built in with this sort of stuff, right? So like one thing that's really important, I think, in my opinion, to take into consideration is that we're on like version 0.00001 of all this technology, right? So if we, for a second, suspend judgment of what is existing on the marketplace and we think about, well, what can it become? Instead of being something that's kind of threatening to the existence of gaming or threatening and unknown and kind of scary. Okay, well, now these become tools that we can use to make our lives better and to have a much better way of doing things. And so that, when I understood that, that's really what kind of lit it all up for me as far as like, okay, I got to go all in on crypto gaming. And that was a really good example. So thank you for bringing up Rocket League, because it's the launch pad to really talk about all this stuff.
Yeah. I remember I was on a marketplace the other day for NFTs, and I was just scrolling through, just doing some research about what's out there. And you start seeing these like socks. It's like, what in the world? Why in the world would somebody want NFTs of socks? And then it looks like you can use these socks in a game.
That's right.
And I can't think of any reason why anybody would care to do that, because from what I understand, it doesn't actually change your performance in the game. It's literally just aesthetic.
Totally.
And so e-gaming as a whole, isn't it a gigantic industry? Like, how big is e-gaming? Do people really know how big it is?
So I want to address the previous question real quick, and then happy to talk about this. This one wasn't really a question, but I want to touch on it because I think this is something that people get in their minds, and I actually think it can be kind of dangerous to innovation. So like the idea of scrolling through a marketplace and seeing socks, and you could put those socks on, you're purchasing them on the marketplace, and then you can use those socks in game, right? That's exactly what we were just talking about with skins.
Right.
And so the difference between why would I want to buy socks for this game versus why would I want to buy a sweet new skin for Rocket League is
paint job.
Right. So it's different because with Rocket League, like they can take that away from you, and you can put, doesn't matter how much money you put in. If they decide that they don't want you in their game, like they could ban your account, they could take away that skin, and you don't have any ability to protect that because you don't really own it. Like if you think about it, you really don't own it at the end of the day. You're paying them for the right to like rent it for as long as they deem you can do that. So that kind of sucks, right? Because
along
you have
with
no
thousands of
there.
other people that have that paid that same money.
Totally. So now with the socks idea, you can now prove that you own the socks, right? So at the very least, you have provable ownership of the skin and of the cosmetic. Okay. So again, right now, the important thing to realize is maybe the socks don't matter. Maybe the socks go away at some point or go away in importance at some point because the game fails and it's a project, and every project or startup has the ability to fail. But it is what it is. But you could always prove that you owned it, and that is just the surface of how. That's just the surface of why these things are so important and why this technology is so important. The specific things being built with the technology right now, 99% of those are not going to matter in the greater scheme of things, right? Just like in the beginning of the internet, 99% of the companies that were built originally did not matter. But at the same time, there was also Amazon that was built in the early stages of the internet. I mean, if we look back in the history of the internet, I wrote an article on this and did some research. So the internet originally was like the beginnings of it. The foundations were created and incentivized by the U.S. government because they were afraid that in the Cold War, the Soviet Union was going to cut off our telephone lines. We wouldn't have the ability to communicate with each other. Right. This is pretty well known fact.
DARPANet.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was in like the 60s that started to happen. Well, it didn't reach commercial viability until the early 90s. And then Amazon didn't come around until I think 94, mid 90s, 1990s. Okay. So if you think about it, it took 30 years from idea and inception to the beginning of the commercial viability for it. And then it took years after that for one of the giants to be created. And still new internet startups are happening every day, right? So if we were to judge how important something was going to be and the future utility of it of the internet in like the 70s, of course it's going to not look at like what it's supposed to look like when it's at full scale. Of course it's not going to be fully developed. Of course it's going to seem stupid, like buying socks on a marketplace. But if we look past that, and we look at the technology and what's possible with it, then we start to realize that we can utilize this technology for our own benefit. And that is something to pay attention to. Because what if, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, or a professional, you're competing with people all the time? What if somebody that you're competing with figures out a way to utilize this technology much better than you do and much earlier on? Okay, well, now they have an unfair competitive advantage that actually it is fair because you kind of did it to yourself because you weren't thinking about, hey, is this going to be important to the world later on as a technology, right? You don't want to be the person that thinks about building a website in 2020. You don't want to be that person because you're miles behind your competitors and everybody else. Like you want to be thinking about how can this technology help me? And how can I leverage it in order to raise myself up in the world and bring myself to a better place. And so from that perspective, then we can start to see how something like an NFT, a non-fungible token, is kind of like a receipt, right? It's just proof of a transaction that is rendered visually. Okay. So it may be a sock in the instance of a game, particular game, but what's to say that that can't be applied to real estate transactions? Why can't the deed or the title of a house be, instead of a piece of paper, why can't that be an NFT? Well, it can. It can, and it actually would make things a lot easier. And so if we start to think about in terms of that, like what can this sort of technology do to make things easier for human beings? Okay, well, now we start to think of some real cool applications for it that go beyond what is on the marketplace right now. Because what is on the marketplace right now is so underdeveloped, and it is like not even beginning to approach scale, and is not even beginning to approach the sophistication that it will become, right?
So,
and so then...
Do we all need to log into the metaverse and Facebook and buy virtual lots of land?
No, I mean, everybody should do whatever they feel comfortable doing. And of course, I'm not going to recommend you go on and spend money on something, especially without doing your own research. What I'm suggesting, and you know, who am I to say? I'm just a random person on the internet.
No, but I think you made a really good point. Your story about the internet, I was a freshman in college when pictures were first added to the web back in the World Wide Web, right? And what was quite interesting is it was that transformation of it going from just email and chat rooms to having photographs. Now all of a sudden people could have web pages. And I just happened to be around it, and I invested myself in learning about just the technology. It reminds me of what you're doing. It's like I jumped in and just started playing with it, learning, trying to do different things. And because of that, I was able to create a foundational knowledge of understanding how I could apply it in the real world by building web pages and e-commerce business for people, to actually turning this into a real agency, a digital agency that's what we do, you know, and we hire lots of people and provide a lot of services to our clients. And it provides real fiat currency that we pay our employees that we can use to buy real estate and things like that. So I think what you're saying is the metaverse is going to happen, whether we think it's the greatest thing ever or, you know, terrible.
Right.
But it's probably worth your time to spend a little bit of time investing and seeing what's in there, familiarizing yourself, because you may not have an idea today about how you could use the metaverse 5 years from now, right? But at least you might have some familiarity with the space and let that idea kind of marinate, or just that experience marinate in your head. Because when you come across that opportunity 5 years from now, it would occur to you if you had some of that experience.
That's right. That's right. And one of the resources I would point everybody to is an article about JP Morgan, right? One of the largest financial powerhouses of our, not even decade, of our century. And look at what they right now are saying about the metaverse and how they're preparing for it. They literally just put in and installed in one of these worlds within the metaverse a like virtual shop or a virtual bank or whatever. And so in addition to that, they also published a study saying that the metaverse was they estimated a $1 trillion a year revenue potential opportunity. Okay. So if JP Morgan, in all of their hugeness as a corporation, can see this coming and can position themselves, right? And they're a bank. So that's like one of the most highly regulated industries we have.
And highly boring.
Totally. But if they're seeing that, okay, you don't need me to say anything. You can, it's worth at least 5 minutes to go read the article about, what
JP Morgan is investing in the metaverse and opening a virtual bank. I think we need to probably all at least go take a look around and see what's in there. Because who knows, there might be something that we do today that can. That's why I asked the question, like, should we all just go buy a virtual plot of land? Because who knows, like that might be real close to the main New York City of the metaverse.
So that's one way to think about possibly participating in the metaverse, right? So if you're talking about buying land in the metaverse, well, let's actually break down what we're talking about. Buying land, so that's buying an NFT that represents a virtual plot of land within a specific world within the metaverse. A lot of people or companies or projects or whatever like to claim that we're building the metaverse. And I'm telling you they're wrong, because they're building one portion or section of the entire metaverse, which includes all things that are not physical. It's everything that's digital is the metaverse, right? And so what you're buying, if you're buying a plot of land in the metaverse, is most likely you're buying an NFT that represents space within one world, within one project within the metaverse. Okay. So first you have to understand you don't have to, you can always do whatever you want. But what I would suggest is you have to understand, okay, what is an NFT? What does that actually mean to buy?
Tell us what that is, because you've said it a lot, and a lot of people listening might not know what an NFT is and how, non-fungible token. But what makes an NFT unique? Yeah,
so non-fungible token is NFT, right? Just an acronym for that. But basically what it says is this is the one and only version of this thing. And
in a digital world.
Yes, in a digital world. So it is the idea of being unique, right? So just to make it super relevant, like, every human being is unique. There's only one of us. Like, we all have fingerprints that are identifying us as us, all of our characteristics, etc. So if you were to quantify a human being in data, that data would be descriptive and would describe us in however ways it would describe us. An NFT is a non-fungible token, is the tokenized version of that data that describes this one thing that is then rendered visually, right? And so a lot of times how it's been manifesting itself is pictures, or what people are calling PFPs, profile pictures, or JPEGs, which is just a file format for photos. And so this is where we come to the whole, I can just right click and save it meme, right? There's a lot of memes in this whole space, right? But so it comes to this whole spot. So why is that not actually a useful exercise to go and say to somebody else, okay, well, you purchase this NFT, but I can just go right click and save it, and that's the same thing. Well, if you try to take your right click saved file and you try to sell that to somebody else, well, now you're actually committing fraud if you don't own the NFT, because the NFT is proven ownership of that particular thing, and that particular bundle of code, that data. It's basically just like a storage unit that stores information similar to like a deed for a house in real estate, right? It's just
doesn't it use powerful cryptography in the Ethereum space to verify through the blockchain the uniqueness of that item?
So now we're getting into something a little bit more complex. So the blockchain is not just one thing. The blockchain is an idea, it's a technology, and there are many different versions of, or many different blockchains. So like Ethereum is one example of a blockchain, right? And that's what's called a layer 1 blockchain, which means things are built on top of it. So there's like Ethereum, there's Avalanche, there's Solana, there's a whole bunch of them. I don't even want to try to name them because I'm gonna miss a ton of them. And so for each specific blockchain, they all have, similar to like a website is built in a certain type of code, each blockchain has its own programming language that it supports, right? So if you think about it, if you just want to simplify it a lot, it's just software that is all coming together, right? And so if you think about an NFT, there are different types of NFTs based on which blockchain they're built on top of. So if the blockchain is your infrastructure, The NFT is a product that's built on top of the infrastructure. It's like one unit of something built on top of that infrastructure. And so you prove, so actually let's take a step back. So blockchain is just basically a ledger that, in accounting, you can say who has what, these transactions have happened, so on and so forth. So it tells you where things are supposed to be and who owns what. Right. So it's very important. It's a very important principle for being able to really do anything. If you and I need to decide who, let's say we're selling a house and someone's buying, someone's selling, well, you have to know who at first owns it and who then after the transaction owns it and what was exchanged in that transaction. And that's kind of like a fundamental building block of society and civilization. And so the blockchain enables people to have a permanent record that anybody can verify of these different transactions, and therefore you can prove who owns what. And so an NFT is minted on a blockchain, just created on a blockchain, and it is then it's provable who owns it, because the transaction happens that says, okay, on this blockchain, this person minted this NFT at this time and date. And then let's say you want to sell it. Okay, well, now this person who originally minted it is now selling it to this other person who's now buying it. And so now we know where it's going. So that's just basically it for an NFT. It's simple when you really dive into it. But the repercussions of this are very powerful, very, very powerful, right? Like think about in a country that has very little ability to understand property rights, or doesn't have a very advanced legal system or any sort of way to really track who owns what. Like a village in a developing country where there's not even they're struggling with running water and electricity. Like, how do you prove who owns what, or what belongs to whom? Right. So that is an example of why we need this kind of stuff, because if you can't prove anybody owns anything, how do you get anything done?
Right. We're stuck in Rocket League world. Like, we don't take that next step forward in terms of the how it could be used and transverse into the real universe. So let's go back to e-gaming. Now, we were talking about a little bit, well, I asked the question. I mean, from what I understand, it's huge. The world of e-gaming is extremely popular. It is gigantic. And maybe you could tell us, how big is e-gaming?
Totally. So according to the last statistics that I read, which was probably a month or two ago, so things may have changed since then. I don't think they really have. But globally, the number of gamers that exist in the world are in the billions. Wow. I think maybe 2 to 3 billion, something like that. Now that includes all mobile games. So on your phone, any sort of console games, on the computer, anywhere that you can play a game that's not like a physical board game. You play Scrabble or something. There's a lot. There's a lot of people. And then, we then have to keep in mind that there's still a portion of the world that does not have electricity. There's a portion of the world that even if they have electricity, they don't have any sort of device that allows them to play games. And then there's another subset, and I don't know which is larger of the devices, but then they don't even have Wi-Fi, like they don't have internet access. And so there's still a large portion of the world that's effectively not online. And so we haven't even reached full scale of the number of gamers in the world and on the planet. So,
but the economics of it are enormous, right? In terms of the amount of economics that the NBA produces. So that's one sport that exists in the real world. How does that compare to e-gaming?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on the NBA and what sort of revenues that they drive. But if you look at in the video gaming world, just the revenues in the video gaming industry in the last couple of years has been roughly probably around 100 billion plus. Wow. And that's only going to increase because the video game industry is still relatively nascent. I mean, if you think about it, like we're still really early on in the whole internet life cycle. We're very early on in the whole gaming life cycle. And esports, while it's been around in some way, shape, or form for probably a couple of decades now, like it's just now becoming more of a thing and becoming more of a mainstream business model or a mainstream idea that people are like, oh yeah, this exists. This is a thing. So we're still super, super early on, and it's just going to get more exciting and more fun as more games are being developed. Probably one of the biggest telltale signs of where the market's going is in the crypto gaming industry for the first time, and it may not be like the very, very first time, but for the first time on a really large scale, we're seeing investment dollars flow into game studios to build games. And that is coming from venture capitalists and big investors and people with a lot of money. The reason why that's significant is because previously the investments for video games typically came from other studios. So it's like gaming has become an entirely new investment niche.
Right.
And so it becomes like its own asset class in a way. And it's going to be amazing because we're going to see the quality, at least I'm hoping, fingers crossed, but we're going to see the quality of games dramatically increase over time, because now we finally have an enormous amount of funding that's getting poured into these games, right. And it's going to be amazing, right?
Yep.
And so then you have to think, well, why would so much money be going towards that? And it's because games are the first iteration on a larger scale of what the metaverse can become, right? A game world is a microcosm of the greater metaverse. And so if some brands or projects or businesses or startups or what investors, whatever, can really nail it on the game side and build a ton of users and build their own world. Okay, well, now they're a really important part of the metaverse because now people are making their money in the game. Okay, why would they ever do anything else? If they're making enough money to be satisfied, whatever their level is, then why would they ever want to leave that ecosystem? And now that becomes their life.
Right.
And now they can then use that to go to other worlds and do other things and then invest in virtual things in the metaverse
or the grocery store.
Yeah. So it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, if everybody is going into that and a lot of money is going towards it and players and people and entrepreneurs and smart thinkers and developers, it becomes a thing because everybody wants to become a thing, or at least enough people want it to become a thing to where it becomes a thing. And like I said, gaming is the next step in the evolution of the internet moving towards this idea of the metaverse. Think Ready Player One, Snow Crash. It's like gamified, which helps people wrap their minds around it. But at the end of the day, like it's already kind of the metaverse. We're just kind of calling it gaming, but it only expands and grows from here on out. And so that also will encompass commerce and shopping. How much better would it be, instead of having to guess whether or not something fits you, you could have your fully digitally rendered self in the metaverse trying it on and feeling how it feels. Well, that's a far superior experience. I mean, full immersion is a far superior experience for a lot of things, because instead of, let's say, for example, us having this conversation, having to look at a computer with, a webcam and having the microphone and headphones, blah, blah. What if we were instead flying on dragons, battling an ancient warlord or something as we're talking about this and showing it in real time? Like, that would be a lot of fun. And while we wouldn't have to do that, we would have the ability to. We would have the option to do things that we would never be able to do in the physical world.
What is it about gaming that our brains crave so much?
So I think this kind of goes back to dopamine. I mean, it's fun. It's like why do we crave things that feel good? It's, because it lights up our senses on the inside. And beyond that, I don't really know. I just know that I know that it's fun, that people do it. And I'm a super competitive person. And so, my favorite sport is basketball. I love playing basketball, but I can't always play basketball all the time. And, if I have a lot of work stuff I have to do in a day, like I can't drive over to the court, play for a couple hours and then come back. But it's way easier for me to say, pop open a game and, play basketball with a controller, or eventually put on a headset and play, shoot some hoops in the metaverse or something like that. So it's easier to access in the video game form. But as far as just games as a whole, I don't really know. I think that's a really great question. I just know humanity has been drawn to it forever. Like there's, my family does family game night. We, like trivia games or charades or, fun things like that. Like it brings us together. So maybe there's a sense of that. But I don't really have a super good answer for you there. I just know that it's fun.
Yeah. Well, I think you nailed it right off the bat. I think dopamine is the answer. And it's the definition of, when things feel fun, it's because of the dopamine. Where are you personally investing? I mean, I know you've got the Crypto Gaming Institute. Are there any other investments or entrepreneurial paths you're taking?
So, of course, I never want to represent a project that I'm in or an investment that I've made, because in the deep crypto space, it's called shilling your bags. And I never want to do that, because somebody might hear me say something and maybe they didn't listen to the whole thing. Maybe they just got this one thing out of context, or maybe they're just looking for something and they don't go in there. They don't go in and do their own research, and they put money in and then they get burnt. And then they're like, oh my God, Ben, you just ruined my life. Right. So I don't want to give a specific thing. But what I am very happy to talk about is to give you a couple of mental models about how to think about these things, to be a launch pad to then go off and do your own research. Right. So when you're thinking about cryptocurrency and investing in games and in the metaverse, the very, 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 very first thing you should do is start learning, right? There's a thing called crypto Twitter. It's just Twitter, but there's a lot of people in crypto, almost everybody who's like really active building out this kind of stuff is on Twitter, and they call it crypto Twitter, right? So head over to crypto Twitter. You want to go and start following really smart people. So I would start by following people who have created some of the top projects or the top crypto projects in the world. So you can go to any sort of website like CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap and just get a ranking of the top however many coins, and they're ranking it by market cap. And so you could just go see like what are the most valuable coins out there right now. Valuable from a market cap perspective, not valuable from like intrinsic value. You have to do your own research to decide that. So then you start to see that a lot of the top coins on there are going to be your infrastructure plays. So your actual blockchain, the coins that are related to the blockchain projects. Or like infrastructural blockchains. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, blah, blah, blah. You also see some stable coins. The whole idea with that is it's supposed to be pegged to $1 1-to-1. Probably not a super good long-term investment vehicle if you're trying to
might as well have dollars.
Yeah. But now they are useful, and there's a whole section of crypto called yield farming, and you use stables, stable coins to call them stable. You use stables sometimes for that to minimize your risk. And anyways, now we're getting way too deep in. But so you want to understand like what the major players are as far as the major blockchains are. So you want to start at the blockchain level, right? This is like your infrastructure. Okay. And now we're talking specifically about investing in crypto games and the metaverse.
Yeah. So where do you spend your time? Like where do you want to focus? Where are you focusing your time? Where do you think your time is best spent?
Yeah. Understanding what this stuff is and what role it all plays, and figuring out how that's going to then scale out and be important to the metaverse. So that's what I'm saying. Start with your layer one blockchains in your infrastructure and the technology that's going to be necessary for the metaverse. And then you have specific games that you can start looking at, but you don't want to go there yet, because then you want to look at launch pads. So like in any startup community or ecosystem, there are incubators, accelerators, launch pads who their whole job is to create new things. So I would start paying attention to those and start figuring out which ones are really good ones to pay attention to. One of my good friends is the head of the incubator at Alliance, and they're Alliance DAO, DeFi Alliance. They just rebranded to Alliance. So they have an amazing whole system of accelerating projects. So you want to then go to the accelerators and the incubators and the launch pads, and then you'll see other projects coming up the pipeline. Okay, so that's kind of like your next layer of understanding, because they're doing some sort of vetting for you. So look at those projects that they're working on, try to understand why they're working on those, and then you can learn a lot there. And then you get to the individual project level. And what you'll see is there are a lot of ways to invest in any one project. Okay, there are typically governance tokens. So each game is most of the time is going to allow for you to vote, have some sort of voting mechanism on what happens with the future of the game. But you typically need to have some of their governance tokens in order to be able to partake in that governance. And so that's one way to make a bet on the game. Then you have their in-game currency. So a big wave right now is called play to earn, play and earn. And so people play, they get paid in the in-game currency, as a reward for playing. And so that's another avenue that you can bet on. I'd be very careful with that one for reasons that are a little bit outside of the scope of this podcast, but just be very careful about investing in in-game currency. Really, really know what you're doing. And then there are the NFTs associated with the game. So you have like 3 options, even if you've decided that you want to be part of the game. And then within the NFT, there are many different types of NFTs. So pick a project that's fun, like go in and play stuff, go mess around with things, and whatever you're drawn to, you're going to naturally want to learn more about it. And you got to figure out your competitive advantage here. So are you a gamer? Do you know what a good game looks like? Are you a business person? Can you identify what a really strong startup looks like? Like, can you analyze their financials and fundamentals and see like what's a good idea? Are you more of just a futurist, and you want to see the projects you think are going to be super important in the future, so you want to bet on those? Like, find your edge, do a ton of research, learn and understand what's going on in the space, and then you'll be able to make a more informed decision. Myself personally, I want to bet on games that have really, really strong economies that are very sustainable, and that I could see myself playing. If somebody said you can only play one game forever, would this be on that list of games that I'd be okay with playing forever? And then who has an amazing team behind it, very transparent. There's this crazy phenomenon going on where there are like anonymous people that have like an alt or like a screen name, and they're going out and building things, and you have no idea who they are. Or like most people don't know who they are. So I don't really want to go for that. I want to more go for like teams that I know who they are, so I can do some research and understand like more about this person. And then I also want to invest in infrastructure to be a part of the technology that is going to be critical for the future of the metaverse really achieving scale. So you also don't have to invest with your money, because there's so many projects that need really talented people, and they're willing to pay you for helping them out. And it's not like you have to go and it's like this new version of a 9-to-5. Like, it's all very like contract based, to where you kind of go in and like maybe you spend an hour or two helping out with this one, then an hour or two helping out with that one. And so it's very freely flowing. Everybody's kind of like their own independent, I say contract based, it's more like independent contractors. Everybody's kind of like running around operating like that. So just go find people that you really like, and games that are really fun, and technology that's really inspiring, and then dig into that and see how it makes sense to participate in that.
Ben, that's excellent advice. Thanks for sharing that. Where can people go to find out about more of your thought leadership and more of what you're into?
Yeah, so I actually have my own podcast Crypto Gaming Institute is a media company right now. So that's an easy way to kind of get exposure to some of the people that are building this. And, I add in a few of my thoughts here and there. I mostly ask questions. I do some writing on my own blog, bengothard.org. I'm hit or miss as far as like consistency of writing there, just depending on the time and my schedule. But if you have any particular questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And it's the cryptogaming.institute.
Yeah, that's the website for the Crypto Gaming Institute. Mm-hmm.
Well, Ben, I'm sure we're going to be following you there. Thank you so much for your time and educating us on just the vastness of what's happening out there in the world. I'm just blown away about. Even though we're talking about how nascent some of these technologies are, they are so far down the road, and this is going to be a part of a lot of our lives, whether we like it or not. And I think your advice about familiarizing yourself with it is really, really good advice. And we're going to be doing that, and appreciate it. You can follow the Law of Relevancy podcast anywhere where podcasts are found, and also on the bakemorepies.com website and lawofrelevancy.com. Thank you again for joining us, Ben, and hope to have you back soon when we have more questions about crypto gaming in industry.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you sharing your platform and your time.
Thanks so much, Ben. Talk to you soon.